welcome to the fourth and final review of the evening. Up this time is Luna the Shadow Dust. What Luna the Shadow Dust is an adventure game. It's a point-and-click adventure game. It is a hand-drawn point-and-click adventure game. And,
very pretty hand-drawn.
Yeah, in terms of its aesthetics, it's very beautiful. Reminds me a lot of the Inner World games that we covered a few years back. In terms of production values, though definitely a different flavor in terms of conveyance, because
the Inner World was a little bit more on the bizarre.
Well, also the Inner World was also on the wordy side of things. This is all non-verbal communication. Non-verbal storytelling engaged as well, which has its advantages and honestly has its drawbacks. The advantage is it's a lot more universal in terms of what it's trying to convey in terms of its narrative. The disadvantage is it can sometimes lack clarity, especially since a lot of this game is very alien and very bizarre. Like you might not be able to get some things just because you're dealing with an oblique world with oblique figures. That's just though that's more a danger inherent to telling your story on a different plane of existence. I'm honestly not sure if this is Earth or not. But in terms of what the story actually is, let's see, how much can I discuss without getting into spoilers? That is kind of the question here. But I guess I can go with the basics. You play as Uri, and a little later on, you will meet up with this cat creature thing called Leia. And by the way, these are not names you will be able to figure out in the game. It's like, I'm looking at the art book right now, and they have the names, and also their names are on the achievements. Like I said, this is kind of the disadvantage of nonverbal storytelling. It's compounded by the fact that this game invented its own language for this world.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, I mean, once again, going to the art book, there's an entire section on the language of the game. Apparently they used the English alphabet and grammar as a base, but just doing that. But they changed it to a more pictographic language. They've got a transliteration guide here, but that's only once again if you have the art book, and the art book is DLC. So
yeah,
like I said, this kind of this approach to storytelling has its advantages, has its disadvantages. Ultimately, it leads to a pretty simple story, all things told. It's just its aesthetical values are pretty high. Like, I think the development team at Lantern spent about 3 to 5 years on this title. I'm a bit foggy on the exact timeline of development, but I know something like this takes a good long time to develop. Because what you're seeing here, it's all hand drawn. It's all been crafted. I'm pretty sure it's not literally hand drawn because not a lot of people do that kind of thing anymore. But there's nothing procedurally generated or randomly generated here. It's all craftsmanship on display. And in terms of the actual puzzles, so this game once again took an interesting, maybe a bit curious bent. It's point and click, but it's not your typical point and click type of puzzles. That is to say, you find an item and you figure out how it goes to X thing or Y door. It doesn't have um, that kind of puzzle. It does carry something akin to that, and that is environmental lock and key puzzles. That is to say, every level of this tower you're going through is locked in some manner, and you've got to figure out how to get past the literal locked doors via the environment. Like, everything you need to get through a level is provided in the level itself. And it's got a pretty typical learning curve. Like, at the beginning, it'll be pretty simple. Like the very first puzzle is trying to figure out how to light up a series of murals of the old gods in order to pass. And, this will eventually culminate in a big 4-part puzzle in a clock tower. And you have to figure out how all the different pieces go together. So it's a fairly sufficient learning curve. And as far as the puzzles themselves, they're fine. I did think this game was a bit, too short. Once again, I suppose that was a necessity of the development of the aesthetics. Everything being hand drawn, this game could only be 20 or so, let's say, levels. And, they were limited in what they could do. Once again, this is the thing that I can only discern without an interview or something from the developers themselves. They'll probably see this, so they are free to fill in our knowledge gaps here. Anyway, so the puzzles are fine. There were a couple of wonky ones, but I think that's every adventure game ever, to be honest. And honestly, that's about it. Like, in real terms, this is a pretty simple adventure game. Its richness comes in its art, and perhaps its narrative and all that stuff. In terms of puzzles, like, it's fine, it's passable, but I really don't think that people are looking at this game on the merits of its mechanics versus its picturesque qualities here. And double-edged sword. In terms of its music, once again, it's top-notch stuff. It's got a oddly Japanese sensibility about it in the sense of construction. That is to say, it's got one main song told a bunch of different ways, though not in the Japanese sense of remixing the song a bit of different, this way or that way. They use different instrumentations of the song in each level. Like, once again, the highlight was the clock tower with the church bells. Rather like that one. And, putting it all together, it's a pretty solid summation of its parts. It's like, I won't lie, I did think that this game could have stood to be longer, but, I suppose, the manpower wasn't there in one way or another. And, in terms of how long it'll take you, I suppose that depends on if you're how well you're good with deductive reasoning. Thankfully, you don't have to deal with moon logic in this game. But, like, there's still logic, but, it's not the one thread of adventure game developer logic that if you didn't understand that, you will never get it. So that's not a thing. I'd say overall playtime will be about 5-7 hours. If you're playing this honestly, if you're not using a guide, and that gets to pricing. So this game clocks in at base pricing is $19.99. It's on sale right now for $17.99, and there's DLC. There's the soundtrack for $6.99, and there is the art book for $4.99. You can get the bundle for $26.97. And that is a total price of $31.97. Let me see. So the game itself at $20 actually may be a bit of a hard sell. Once again, not gonna lie, this game is on the short side. And that I really think is the big stumbling block in terms of giving this a full-on recommendation. As a game itself, it's one of the better games I've played this year. Maybe a game of the year contender. But in terms of for the regular, maybe the non-adventure goer, it's hard to say that $20 is worthwhile for such a simple and short adventure game. Let's see. As far as the soundtrack, and bit of an update in terms of the Steam service in and of itself. They've recently updated the music player to the point where I believe you can actually buy the soundtrack separately, and you can enjoy it on its own. Apparently they can release soundtracks. It's a much more iTunesy, Spotify kind of setup now. Basically, it's a lot better than what was beforehand. I can definitely say that. As far as the soundtrack itself, $6.99 is my recommendation there as well. Once again, it's a good soundtrack, but every sound piece is about a minute to 2 minutes long. It's a kind of a summation of the game itself, if I'm being honest. But if you are buying this game, I would definitely recommend the art book. The art book is pretty invaluable because, well, it's not just an art book in the sense of here, look at the pretty concept art. This game actually explains what's going on in the game. It's basically the thing that contains all the deep lore. Though, word of warning, this art book does double as spoilers, because it's got all of the puzzles in. It's got the solution. It's got several of the solutions as well. Especially if you look hard enough. Maybe less I will say that was helpful in a couple of spaces, because we got pre-release codes, and we've done pre-release adventure game reviews before. And the danger there is, you get stuck. For one reason or another. But yeah, ultimately, like I said, in terms of arbitrary score, 8 out of 10. Really great adventure game for as long as it lasted. It's just, it doesn't last all that long. And yeah, that'll about do it for this review for Luna here. And that'll do it for the review session as well. So the week ahead, on Wednesday, February 19th, we'll be having Clement Marthe. I think that's how that's pronounced. Play Together Studio. Play Together is working on their first game, Mad Experiments Escape Room. It's a multiplayer puzzle game. It looks really interesting. Also, we got beta codes. I think I sent those to everyone. So guess what you all would be doing during the interview? Yeah, I'm you'll be showing off those puzzles. Let's see. So Friday we are nominally scheduled to have Volker Ritz Happet of Application Systems Heidelberg, German name. So always. But they haven't confirmed that they will be doing the interview this week. So touch and go there. This might not be happening this week. This might be happening another week. Kind of wanted to get this interview in around one of the adventure games that they gave us. They gave us 2. The other one is happening in early March. So this review could slide a bit. So this interview could slide a bit. We will probably have an update on this situation on Wednesday. So until then, I shall wish you good gaming.